chat. We will be looking at that. But yeah, save your questions for the end. Hand feature, safe space rules apply. We expect respect and encourage vulnerability. Please put your webcams on. We want to see everybody. This is our last event of the year. And do mute your microphones while we are doing the panel. Again, please feel free to use the chat for discussion. It is definitely a fun space if you've been to one of our events, but do, be respectful of the speakers as well. We don't want to have too much fun on the chat sidelines as well. And then if you're having issues with Slack or any tech issues, Danielle and Kenny will be there to support. Code of conduct. One of the big factors that make our group quite different from others is we do have a code of conduct ever since we've been a community. And so everyone here adheres to that. And if you have feedback or concerns, please message us in our email. We're always looking to make our events safer for all. A little bit about our community. So if you're new to one of our events, welcome. It is a fully remote volunteer-based Vancouver team. Prior to the pandemic, we actually met in person. These are real photos, real pizza at one of our events, but we have transitioned into an online space and now have speakers from more than just Vancouver, which is very exciting. Our real pizza, yes. This is our Slack community. When we are not meeting once a month, we are chatting on Slack. These are some of our most popular channels. We have around 750 people. The jobs looking for is definitely the place to be. There's a lot of chatter in Bookshelf, but it's a great way to know what's going on in the VDPM space, but also in the DPM space. We have a website. Do visit us as we start to have more and more recorded videos. This is where you'll find them. We have a YouTube channel. We're trying to make the information in these panels available post-event so that it's not a huge deal if you miss one, but you also won't get to engage and interact. And so there's different opportunities there. And then moving on to our sponsors, this entire community is really supported by our sponsors. They make us able to do fun things. And I'm so glad Travis is here today to do a little bit of an intro. Hi, Travis.
Hi, everyone. Hi, everyone. I'm the co-founder of Louder Than 10. So we train people how to run healthier, more equitable, and sustainable projects and operations at digital agencies, product studios, in-house teams, things like that. So we've designed our curriculum and delivery specifically for our industry in an approach we call democratic project management and operations. So we train people, whether you're a new PM or experienced, an owner even, and even like entire teams we've trained. But we help them basically run better projects, healthier companies. Most apprentices make their tuition back before they've even finished the training. So it's a pretty good thing we're pretty proud of. So registration is now open for February. You can hit up my partner Rachel in Slack if you have any questions, or hit us up on our website at Louder Than 10. And if you use that discount code VDPM when you enroll, you can get 10% off our foundations or apprenticeship course.
Thanks, Trav. Great resource. Louder Than 10's resources blog have so much resources as well. Great links to valuable information. So do check them out. Our next sponsor is Talent Marketplace. They've been our sponsor as well for a few years now. They run a recruitment agency, mostly for PMs, but they've also now changed to change management, BAs, DevOps, all kinds of things. So check them out as well. And then your org, we're always looking for partners and sponsors. That is how we make this community and this machine run and keep going 7 years strong. So always open to speaker ideas, content ideas, sponsorship. Same email, we're right there. And now we'll get into the event itself. We're here for an hour and a half. We have 3 panelists for you. We'll be doing Q&A at the end. And so I'll pass on the mic, the fake mic to Danielle, who'll introduce the speakers and then introduce the moderators as well.
Awesome, thanks, Ritika. I will take that metaphorical mic. Tonight we have Tanner Bokor, who is the Manager of Field Marketing for the North American Public Sector at Chainalysis. He is joining us from Washington, D.C. in the States. A fun fact about Tanner is that he plays 13 different musical instruments. We also have Dr. Sarah Dotz, who is a deep tech innovation maven, who is joining us from Melbourne, Australia. Holiday fun fact about Sarah is that she has a Christmas light display that's going live in a few weeks that has 7,688 pixel lights in it. Definitely DM her for more info. Manoj Agarwal is joining us. He's local here to Vancouver, BC. He's the founder and CIO of Tetranoodle Technologies. And a fun fact about Manoj is that he loves adventure sports, including bungee jumping. So welcome to all of our speakers. Please unmute yourselves, and I will hand the, yet again, metaphorical mic to Kenny to ask our first question.
Hi, everyone. Welcome, and excited to get started with everyone. So first question is, if you could describe your field in 1 minute or less to people that don't know anything about it. And we'll start alphabetically with Manoj.
Hey guys, excited to be here. I'm one of the leading experts in the field of artificial intelligence. I have 4 patents in artificial intelligence. So another thing that we do differently is we combine the knowledge of human psychology and neuroscience with artificial intelligence to create very compelling solutions, help companies gain traction, increase customer loyalty, customer lifetime value, and such. So it's all about learning about what humans are thinking, utilizing automation and artificial intelligence to amplify that signal.
Amazing, thank you. Sarah, you can go next.
Hey, everybody. So for me at the moment, I'm working with predictive analytics, data science, and machine learning engineering. I'm with one of Australia's very large energy companies, and we're looking at the future of data as an asset, and then how do we actually realize that asset by not just finding the patterns in it, but figuring out how those patterns can be related to solutions that we can bring into the business that can change the future.
Thank you. And last but not least, Tanner.
Great. Well, super happy to be here tonight. So I work for a company called Chainalysis. We are the market leader in blockchain data and OSINT, open source intelligence. So what we do is we're actually taking a look at cryptocurrency transactions on the blockchain in real time, and we're helping the private sector and public sector to really understand those transactions in helping to make crypto a really safe asset class to invest in. So whether that be understanding transactions and their exposure to illicit darknet markets or child exploitation purchases, we're just really helping private entities be able to provide crypto assets to consumers. Chainalysis is really at the core of that industry, and we were one of the founders, and I actually work in field marketing, so I work with our public sector customers in helping to spread that word and provide some of those capabilities.
Wonderful, thanks everyone. And to everybody, feel free to, if you have any questions, to pop them in the chat, or if you want to just get the conversation going there, you're more than welcome. So my next question would be, what role do you have in your field and what do you like about it? Tanner, maybe you can start us off.
Sure. So as I mentioned, I work in field marketing. Field marketing is kind of a newer term these days for the merging of demand generation with event marketing. So what I do is I work very closely with our sales teams, our thought leaders, our research teams, and it's really about connecting with different public sector agencies, in my case, about how to utilize crypto investigatory tools in their workflow. So I'm kind of the nexus between different parts of the company and our customer base. Kind of think of it like air traffic control, where I get to basically project manage at a very high level many complex programs. What I love about it is, well, Chainalysis is a really unique company. It's a unicorn with about a $4 billion valuation. I have colleagues all over the world in APAC and EMEA, and no 2 days are really similar for me. One day I can be on the phone with a senator's office on the Hill here in DC. The next day I can actually be talking to an agency in Vancouver. So very fast-paced industry, lots of different projects on the go. And for me, that's a really unique and beneficial environment to be in.
Seems like you can't be bored, Tanner.
Never.
Amazing. Sarah, what's your role and what do you like about it?
So my role and my specialty is really starting with about 95% uncertainty, where you want to do something new with tech that you haven't done before, and you're trying to figure out how do you actually untangle that Gordian knot that you start with of this is all really hard and really complicated, and I don't know how to manage it, and I don't know what I need, and I don't know how to get to the outcome that we're looking for. So I've been involved in doing that for the last 3 or 4 years in the data science space, and it's been really a fascinating piece of learning that people think that a model and a machine learning algorithm is a thing and it's an outcome, and it's actually not. It's a tool that sits behind a solution. So what I really like is seeing the things that need to go around it, and the team and the diverse set of skills that you need to actually get machine learning into any kind of business where it's going to be able to make a difference for the future of that business. And then the whole idea that it learns, it's like most IT projects. If you do the delivery, you pass it over and it's done and it's finished. In the data science world, that's kind of like saying, okay, I've finished high school, I'm a fully mature grown-up person and I'm never going to change anything again, right? It doesn't work like that. So it's actually looking at how do you switch from project to product thinking, get the feedback loops and get the continual learning in, so that machine learning and predictive models are about changing the future. So as you change the future, the data you're using is also going to change, and you need to be able to evolve to ride that. And it's just a lot of fun to get through that different way of thinking about things.
Thank you for that. Seems I love the high school analogy. Manoj, I want to hear more about your side as well.
Yeah, so sure. Just a quick note. Sorry for the background noise. I have a sick kid. For me, I'm the chief, obviously CEO, so I manage the day-to-day operations. But one of the key roles I play is innovation in terms of when we are working with a client, understanding their problem. And as I said, the unique things that we focus on is understanding the human side of things, motivation, what the customer, what are the psychological factors that are hidden, behind the scenes, and how can we leverage that human motivation and apply technology to it. To give an example, we were working with IBM last year. One of the things IBM offers is professional education. So during the lockdown, the experience enrollments were going way down. And we did quick research and we found out that they were targeting some younger audience, and they were not interested in learning about computer science at all during the lockdown. They were locked in for months and months. What they really wanted to do was have fun, connect with others, learn about other cultures. So utilizing that data, what we did was we created an event where we invited some celebrities from different fields, Bollywood and arts and music, and we paired these celebrities up with the IBM's AI scientists. So AI scientists created a little bit of an art on their machines, and these celebrities learned a little bit of basic computer science, like, hello world. And that event generated a lot of interest in the marketplace, where all these youngsters flocked to sort of, learn about, hey, what is happening with these celebrities. So just looking at that problem from a different angle, and every situation is so unique. Because I come from an engineering background, and engineers are generally very introverted, not interested in talking to people, mostly interested in talking to machines. So now, having to just understand human beings and applying technology on it, it's very, very exciting.
Amazing. That sounds so yeah, I could ask so many questions, and I feel that it's super interesting. Each of you have very interesting fields and things to say. And so talking about that, what would be a big or some of the misconceptions that you come across often in your field? And maybe you can start with Manoj.
Well, one of the key things that I see is that most of the time when we are trying to solve a problem, we go with the conventional wisdom and say, okay, this is the only way that it has been done for decades. That's the only way it can be solved, rather than looking at it from a different angle, a unique angle. And I think that speaks to our risk averseness. Like we don't want to really break new ground, because particularly, if we are working on high risk projects where multiple millions of dollars are involved, or in corporate sector where people are not generally open to taking risks. And what I have found is, if we just dig a little bit deeper, some solutions can be so extraordinarily amazing that they can provide 10x, 100x more efficiency, better results, cost savings, and whatnot. So that I believe is one thing that I'll share.
Yeah, I feel like usually we wait until there's a catastrophe to change, and we changed a lot in the last year. So that's
Absolutely.
Pretty good point. Sarah, what's a misconception that you have? You touched on it, but curious to know if you have more.
There are so many, it's almost a tricky question. I think that the biggest misconception that I find is people don't know how to manage what they don't understand. So one of the really interesting things we've come across in data science is that because people don't understand what data science is, and they don't understand what data scientists do, they kind of put it into a black box and say, just do whatever it is you do, and I'm sure it'll be fine. And that leads to a huge amount of personal accountability for people, and a belief that you can't industrialize a data science system. And you absolutely can. And I think the whole industry is starting to get its head around what that looks like. Machine learning engineers are coming. We've just built one of the first machine learning platforms in Australia that will scale to some fairly serious enterprise grade safety rails for the sort of work that we're doing. But it's this whole data scientists are wizards, and therefore you need to rely on the wizard's ability to do magic to make data science work. Data science done well and delivering value for any kind of business is a team sport, and you don't put the data scientist in charge. really don't. They're really good at answering the question, but the trick is to actually ask the right question. And it's the figuring out how to ask the question, which requires a lot of human understanding. It requires commercial acumen, and it requires a different set of skills, but being able to bridge from that, what is it that we're actually trying to change? And my favorite conversation in that space starts with, let's assume literally that data science is magic. Tell me what you want to know about tomorrow, and then tell me what you're going to do if I can give you an answer. And if you can give me a good answer, then I'll tell you whether we're going to be able to build it or not. But data science at the end of the day is a tool, but it's got a very strange perception that it can do anything, and it can't.
That's quite fascinating, actually. And Tanner, I'm curious about. I'm sorry, you have a lot too.
Yeah, so I'm going to break my answer into two pieces, one about crypto and one about those of us who actually work with crypto. So for crypto itself, crypto has been around since 2009 with the launch of Bitcoin, and it really in the past couple of years has become more of a mainstream asset class. And you can take a look at the price of Bitcoin today. We nearly rose to 70,000 evaluation. If you look 2 years ago, Bitcoin was valued at a little less than 2,000 US. So tremendous growth, but with tremendous growth comes quite a few misconceptions. One of them being that cryptocurrency is anonymous. And anyone who tells you that crypto is anonymous is not telling you the truth. Crypto is pseudonymous. It does have inherent privacy components built into its structure, but at the end of the day, on-chain transactions and the nature of a blockchain being open, this distributed ledger model, it's really designed to be transparent and opaque. So do you have some privacy on the blockchain? Yes. Can you be identified on the blockchain? You absolutely can. So that's one of the common misconceptions that, funnily enough, criminals miss frequently, but also thinking from a public policy perspective, and I work in public sector field marketing, oftentimes when you're talking with decision makers in Canada and the US, internationally, trying to explain that cryptocurrency is not really being used by illicit actors in a mainstream sense. Yes, it is commonly mentioned as a nexus with ransomware and with darknet markets and child exploitation, but it really is a safe asset class that millions and millions of users around the world are safely interacting with. But there's a misconception of illicit usage is more predominant than it really is. So we're trying to do some work on really dispelling that overall. For those of us who work with crypto, we run into a significant education issue where we're really trying to explain, crypto is not this galaxy brain concept that, only a select few can interact with. What it's really designed to do is democratize finance. It's designed to create distributed models where the underbanked, the overbanked, anyone who really wants to engage in this open distributed network can really engage and trade safely. So trying to share that message is definitely one of my challenges. And working within the crypto industry, which is really evolving so rapidly from the exchange sides that are actually providing services to those of us more on the compliance and the analytics side, who we're really trying to provide a service to make that asset class a little bit safer. There are some growing pains around, from privacy. What does privacy really look like? How much information do we really want to be sharing with the private sector and the public sector? When we talk about taxation, well, should there be taxation? If so, what does that look like? When we talk about, how do we really regulate the industry? There's so many conversations happening internationally about that. So it's a very dynamic and fluid industry that has changes day to day. And we are always finding ourselves having to combat misconceptions.
Well, who would have thought that with complex fields there would be misconceptions, but yeah, thank you for that. And Josh is going to take it from there and ask you the last two questions.
Yeah, thanks, Kenny. This obviously is a great discussion so far. There's definitely some topics maybe to follow up on after as well, but I can carry on with these questions. I think some things will come back to you after as well. But yeah, I think just kind of shifting more specifically to the project management side of things. Just curious, I know Tanner, you kind of talked about some projects and stuff there too, and programs, various things that you're involved in. And just curious what project management looks like in the field, maybe specifically for you, like what's the North Star that's really kind of guiding projects or initiatives? Is it an approach or obviously strategy, or is it focused around risk or other things? In the project management world, we obviously scope, schedule, costs, that kind of stuff, but I'm sure there's a little bit more of a specific driver there. So maybe Tanner, you can start with that one.
Yeah, so at the end of the day, my job really boils down to trying to connect with the right people to have the right conversations at the right time. So I'm looking at the entire field of the public sector and saying, well, where are my targets actually going to be present? How can I engage with them? Where am I going to get the best ROI for my effort? So because I run all field marketing in North America, I have about 73 different programs. Those can range from trade shows, they can range to webinars, they can range to small dinners even. And really, like our project methodology is still evolving. For me, I actually just ground everything in communication. Being in a startup environment where processes are shifting day to day, we're maturing, we're really growing and scaling the business at a phenomenal rate. Everything boils down to how you communicate with your colleagues, how the rapport that you build with them, the transparency that you build into your processes, and quite frankly, the reputation for being both an honest broker, but also being a credible party to work with. That is, for all of the teams that I work with, kind of our foundation in how we advance our projects forward. The actual nuts and bolts of how we develop a trade show end to end, well, anybody can take that on in their own way, but we ground everything in a really strong communication basis.
Yeah, thanks, Tanner. That's a really great response and comment. I think, in project management, communications, the kind of the plans, the strategies, and especially, being very cognizant of the frequency or the people involved and stuff and that sort of thing, and really having that be a deliberate, intentional plan is important. So, and that's a really great thing to base things around. So I appreciate that response. It's really, really important. Yeah, Sarah, down for you in terms of project management. Is there other things there that's in terms of how you're developing things or how your teams operate, et cetera?
So we spent a bunch of time thinking about this, and there's a framework that's come out through that, and that is gated investment is really important. That's project managed, and you start off when your uncertainty is the highest by figuring out what your biggest risk is and invest a small amount of money and sort that risk out. And then as the risk goes down, the investment goes up as you get closer to a solution. So there are three lenses we look at around those risks, and those are desirability. So does somebody actually want the solution, and are they going to use it if you build it? Which is actually the biggest risk in the whole thing. The second one is about feasibility. So can you actually technically do it? And then the third one is viability, which is, will it pay for itself in the longer term? Or are you actually going to spend more money building the solution and running it than it's actually going to turn around for the business? So that desirability one is one that we do look at right at the very start. And that's why we tend to start with this solution design phase about, what is it that you're actually going to build? What's the lever you're trying to pull? What are you going to change if we can give you this information about what tomorrow is going to look like? We then get into, if we get through that, then we get change management involved right at the start as well. And an example of why we do that is one of the challenges we were looking at in a recent role was about figuring out, why do people call centers and how do we stop customers complaining? So we pulled the data out. We didn't have change management as well involved at that point. We pulled the data out. We went, yep, there's a pattern in here. And yes, we can see, and we can tell you what the probability is a customer is going to complain. Great. What are you going to do with it? What do you mean? Isn't it enough to know that people are going to complain? Then they eventually worked out, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to put a box on the call center agent's page that when somebody calls, it'll tell them, this is the likelihood of this person complaining. So please spend more time with them. Please make sure you resolve their issues. The problem is that the KPIs for those call center agents were, how many calls can I get through in an hour? Not what the outcome of the call is, and not is the person going to complain. That wasn't on their KPI list at all. For me, that was a really powerful learning about why you need to have change management right at the start, and you need to have the hypothetical conversation about, if we build this, what are you going to do with it? Whose job is going to change, and why would they use it? And what are the blockers for them using it? And that one, we eventually got to a better outcome by actually changing their KPIs, which is nothing to do with the data science or the predictive nature of what we were doing. So change management is really, really important as part of thinking about what we do. There was one other thing I was going to talk to about change management, and it's just flown out of my head.
We can, yeah.
Hey?
I think I can always come back to you if you need it.
That's right. And I talked to Ritika about it, is that data science is actually a science. And so done well, you apply the scientific method. And that means you have a hypothesis about what you think is going to work, and you poke holes in it. So people say you can't project manage data science because the scientists can't tell you how long it's going to take them to find the pattern or how long it's going to take to find a solution. So please fund our open-ended project for as long as it takes us to actually do that. That doesn't make sense from a commercial perspective. So what we then end up doing is coming up with a set of hypotheses at the start of it, and you can absolutely plan the program of work to test those hypotheses. You need to be able to deal with the fact that at the end of that, you may come up with a solution that says your data isn't good enough to support an outcome coming out of this, or it may be there is actually no pattern in the data. You're not going to be able to do what you want to do. So you can't project manage necessarily the outcome, but you can project manage the process and the program of work that you need to get to a decision point. And that's also then part of that investment and stage gating about that's a risk that, okay, that one's been realized. So that may be a reason why we need to shelve the project.
That's such a great point there. Absolutely, you know, like not project managing necessarily, yeah, the outcome of where it's going to get to, but that process and you know, involved in it, and that can totally be planned. That's it's a great comment. The desirability comment you had as well too, Sarah, is just, you know, I feel like just, yeah, everybody's probably had it too, where sometimes there's a call for or a need or an ask, and it's obviously desired, but is it really going to be effective? You know, or what are the expectations for that solution? Maybe, you know, it's what the person's thinking they're looking at, or what's looking at being you know, desired isn't really going to give them the outcome they're looking for, or come up with the solution they're looking for.
And it does mean you've got to manage your stakeholders' expectations very differently.
Absolutely.
To a project. It's not about there's a program of work and at the end of it we can guarantee that you'll have this. It's that we need to have a agreed pocket of investment to address the risks, and if we get through the risks, then we'll be able to build you something that's going to return value to the business. But that one of the other outcomes of that process is you may actually want to stop, and at least you then know not to continue to invest in that space because there's nothing there to pursue.
Yeah, that's still a result. You know, it's not necessarily the conventional project. It's the one that's maybe identifying whether there is an actual more conventional project to approach it, but it's that the value's there. So
if you find yourself doing this, they don't listen, and then they go, what do you mean there's no pattern in the data?
Yeah.
Like we told you this was coming. So you actually were serious when you said there might not be like, yeah. So just be aware there is that moment that people, again, who don't necessarily understand the process or understand that there is inherent statistical risk in what you're doing, assume that you'll get to an outcome, and you will, but it may not be the outcome that they're hoping for.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's some great comments in the chat as well too, Mike. Yeah, Scrum applied to data science. Absolutely, it's not, you know, not necessarily from the beginning. And yeah, sometimes project delivers what the client asked for, but not what the needs are for the business. A great comment from Kier as well. So yeah, Manoj, do you have something to add there in terms of project management in your?
Yeah, one of the unique things, obviously, you know, we have experienced is hybrid and remote work. And before the event, we were talking about, you know, being in tech sector, we are sort of used to working remotely, those of us who are in tech sector. But I found during the last 2 years, pretty much everybody has become comfortable in remote work. So when we have worked with the clients in the past, you know, we also help them build their teams, marketing teams, technical teams. And it has been a challenge to find, you know, really good candidates locally sometimes. But now with the attitude changing, not only people are willing to find local or national candidates that fit the role, but they are willing to go global. So it has been really interesting building global teams. My own team is spread across 4 continents, different time zones, and that creates, you know, that brings up obviously a lot of challenges, you know, coordinating in different time zones. But what I've noticed is the amount of neurodiversity that comes in, the kind of, you know, ideas that people come up with, which is so much more beneficial than tackling, you know, small issues like time zones, because the end solution is so much better when you have diversity of thought, when people come at it from different angles. And in terms of, you know, as Tanner mentioned, in this distributed environment and hybrid environment, communication becomes the most important thing. So we basically encourage over communication rather than sort of making any kind of assumptions. Cloud-based project management tools, ClickUp, you know, a lot of people are used to I mean, Jira and some other tools, but one of the tools that we have adopted is ClickUp, which has been a really versatile, really good. So it has helped us keep track of everything and build processes for each type of project or sub-project or task we are doing. So these are some of the tips that I can share that have really worked wonders in the past 2 years.
Yeah, that's another great call out to that, the communication, the change management pieces there are all there too as well. You know, like when you have something, speaking as a personal experience working in something, for example, like construction, something very concrete, you know, everybody has a package of what's to build in front of them. When it's something a little more, you know, kind of ever changing and kind of, you know, the things aren't so super clear to begin with. It's the communication becomes the foundation right there, right? Because you're not all looking at the same thing every time. So ClickUp is also a great shout out too. I know obviously there's been some tools used for us as well, but yeah, in terms of there's some questions here too. Yeah, Mike, that's what I did there. Construction, concrete. Yeah, no pun intended. But yeah, I think I just had a question for you from before, Manoj, just about talking about risk aversion and opportunities to kind of break new ground, and how, you know, there's the fear of that, but like where do those opportunities lie? Like when is it kind of separate from like say you're going into a project or working with a client, is there an opportunity to bring that to the table, or is it part of going to be rolled into budgets to look at innovations, or are they kind of stumbled upon sometimes? Where do you find those opportunities to break that new ground?
Well, I mean, there are two aspects to it. One is when we are working on a problem, if we can start working backwards, you know, what are the results we are looking for? And rather than thinking, okay, because generally, you know, people work forwards, meaning, okay, let's find a method to solve this problem which has been used earlier, and then let's take step 1, step 2, step 3, and go from there. When you're thinking innovation, it works out really wonders, like really well if you work backwards and say, okay, we are looking to grow our revenue 10x. So what is the best thing that we can do here? And then that creates opportunity for innovation. The other thing is the open-mindedness of the decision makers or the person who's writing the check. So as Sarah mentioned, like a lot of times you actually have to educate them. You have to sort of, you know, work with them to say, hey, if we do this, there is an added risk, but there is a huge reward that is possible as well. If you're open to it, we can iterate with a very small sort of iteration. We can try a few hypotheses, see what the results are. And if it shows some promise, then we can move ahead. And in that agile fashion, we can sort of, you know, cover the risk to a certain degree. But if the client or the decision maker is not even open-minded enough to take that much risk, then it's just best to, you know, just go with the traditional route. And both methods are okay. I mean, there is no hard and fast rule here, but generally, if you're open-minded enough, some innovations may really surprise you.
Yeah, thanks, Manoj. That's really great. Yeah, you know, just kind of feeling it out and see if there's an opportunity to test the waters, and what Ritika said there too, just as so much education is required, even in project management as a whole too, just really educating, informing stakeholders, informing the clients, you know, across the board. So I know one more thing I'll add there is, again, going back to my psychology background, some of the ways to move the needle in terms of the decision maker is to really align the outcome with their priority. In some cases, they are looking to rise in their organization. They're looking to get that next promotion. And again, I'm just saying, using these as an examples which are typical. And if you can demonstrate, hey, if this process is successful, if we innovate well, you will get all the credit, and that sometimes greases the wheels. Yeah, using that psychology background, that's it comes in handy, right? So I have one of those as well, and definitely it comes in handy working with that understanding and getting the alignment needed. So very important. There's a couple other questions here too I want to get to just from the chat. We open this up for the other panel members as well too. We'll see if anybody has any comments. The next question is, how do panel members see current governments keeping control of the currency that they need to run their countries? Will it be starting at an endpoint of regulation of a transaction? This is really more for Tanner, obviously, I guess, this from the question here. So Tanner, you want to have a crack
Yeah,
at it?
it's a great question and extremely timely. If you look out in APAC, I mean, China has been marching towards launching their own digital currency, the digital yuan, while simultaneously shutting down all private crypto exchanges and miners. And here in you know well, in North America broadly, Canada, I think, is still a little bit behind where the US stands. We're also having very similar conversations about, are we going to have a digital US currency that is going to be backed by some government agency? And that's still TBD. Right now, we're still trying to define whether crypto is defined as a security, which would then be regulated very differently than a currency, or if we do actually view it as a currency that is free and open to trade with some KYC and some AML, anti-money laundering practices in place. From a pure public policy perspective, governments really aren't that concerned about seeing devaluation of the currency. They're not really that concerned about having liquidity to be able to fund essential services. If you look down in South America, you even had El Salvador actually adopt Bitcoin as a legal tender. So you can kind of see this duality happening right now with fiat currencies still running the course, still mainstream, but crypto being a bit of a supplement. And I think that's probably where we're going to be internationally for at least the next decade. In terms of the financial infrastructure, though, globally, that's a different question. DeFi, or decentralized finance, which is really what crypto and blockchain is looking to enable, that is a threat to banking infrastructure internationally, because instead of having to think about bank transfers and SWIFT codes, it's as simple now as me sending a transaction to my cousin in London just using a Coinbase app. And from a government perspective and from a banking perspective, they don't need to go through all the same infrastructure that they used to. That's also a bit of an issue for, quite frankly, crime. One of the major trends that we see is folks are trying to use that nature being able to send crypto without having to use processes that might have strong KYC or AML behind it to pay for illicit purposes, darknet purchases being one, ransomware payments being another. So there's a lot of different components and complex components to this one, but to sum it up, no, it's not really a major concern right now.
Thanks, Tanner. That was a very good kind of summary of a very complex answer to a question there. So I really appreciate that. Manu, did you have something to add there? Is that you?
No.
Oh, okay, sorry. Just saw your hand. Wasn't sure if it was the digital hand there. So yeah, just there's a question, maybe carry on in the chat. I just thought I could put it in there. People divided on how they see crypto. Maybe if you have any comments to add in the chat. I have another question for Sarah that came up in the chat. So this one's from Tom. So was the other one as well. So on desire from the market, do you see it expanding or morphing as the market learns more from what you expose from the data that you're presenting or discovering?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The market is whoever essentially is going to be the owner of the data science product that you're building. And there is a teachable moment where they finally get it. But up until then, I think I've heard my job described as managing disappointment. Innovation, that's part of the job. It doesn't go the way you want it to go. There are things that you didn't see coming that were outside of scope. Your data may not be up to speed, or you've got to go and collect some different data for a bunch of years, or months or years until you've actually got the data you need to do it. But once you've got a sponsor who's seen what it can do, the appetite for risk changes. Right, there's a really interesting story that they've run with management of large organizations. It's going, all right, if I was to give you a portfolio of 10 projects, and I'm going to tell you that 3 of those are going to lose the lot, 3 of them will break even, 3 of them will double the money, and 1 of them will give you 10x return, would you take on that portfolio? And they go, yes, absolutely. So there you go. Great. So why do you analyze each of these projects independently and require each of them to be able to give you a 1.3x return over 3 years? You know, if you're looking for 30% ROI, you're not actually looking for what you think is the more desirable outcome. You're actually, by not accepting the higher risk and more interesting projects, you're actually taking out the potential upside of exploring those spaces. And that's one of the real problems with a lot of leadership. And in fact, with us as a human species, we are crap at assessing risk. We don't like it. We are not very good at dealing with the downside of it. And when we can't get our heads easily around portfolio risk. So the idea of doing a portfolio of higher risk activities, some of which will go in our favor and some of which won't go in our favor, is something that most people are profoundly uncomfortable with. And people haven't generally got promoted to senior managers by taking those kind of risks successfully. But when they do, you've got a really cracking, usually entrepreneur on your hands, who is prepared to do some very different things. And I think that's what you see in the Atlassian boys, and that's what you see in Elon Musk, is people who actually understand portfolio risk. Most leaders and most stakeholders don't. Does that help, Tom, or does that give you a viable answer? Cool. It's all right, we can see you.
Yeah.
The Martian is alive and well.
Great, thanks so much, Sarah. There's no more other questions in the chat, but I did have another question for the three of you, as a question here for essentially your fields. You know, obviously the title of the talk as well too. Just thinking about like, what does the new frontier look like, you know, in your field? So, you know, how would you expect the tech to kind of change or unlock new things, and what, you know, what's behind the next door? You know, what are we looking at? So, and for that, maybe I can come to Manoj first, seeing what's coming up next.
Well, I mean, we are living in a unique time right now. You know, one example I give is if we look at human history, major inventions or discoveries have been made after a few hundred years. You know, like printing press happened, and then industrial revolution took like you know, a number of centuries. Well, right now we are living in a time where a lot of groundbreaking technologies are actually coming together at the same time. So artificial intelligence, cloud computing, blockchain, CRISPR, you know, all these technologies are going to change the world, and we are not even there yet with you know, things like general artificial intelligence or I forget the name, the quantum computing. Quantum computing is about to change the whole spectrum of you know, science itself, like our understanding of nature itself. So in my opinion, the next 10 years, 20 years are going to look very, very different. And you know, we used to think that, okay, this kind of radical change is about 25 years, 30, 40 years in the future. But I think a number of events like 2020 has sort of compressed a lot of digitization efforts into a few weeks. Secondly, we are much closer, in my opinion, personal opinion, to general artificial intelligence than I previously thought with things like GPT-3. If you haven't heard of it, look it up. It's a fun, you know, phenomenal AI-based model released by Elon Musk's company. And so these things are happening simultaneously, and the future is just very exciting. I think we are going to be living in a very, very different world in 10, 15 years, for sure.
Yeah, just so interesting how the pandemic has accelerated things, and it's yeah, some of the things that have come out of that, the innovations that are kind of being accelerated. Yeah, Tanner, do you have something to add there for your field?
Yeah, definitely. One of the topics that's always really interesting in crypto is, outside of Bitcoin, looking at other blockchains, Ethereum being one of the common kind of alts, and their play into smart contracts, and, you know, escrow contracts, and thinking about NFTs. Really what we're seeing is an understanding that the underlying principles of what is a blockchain can be applied to more than just your standard monetary transactions. we are now seeing blockchain being used for real estate transactions. We're also seeing it actually be used for Web3 applications. So there's lots of different ways that developers out there have really been spurred on by the pandemic, and being able to be hyper-focused on a handful of projects and scale up rather quickly with minimal computer science knowledge to build these projects. We're seeing some very rapid innovation. One of the concerns, though, with innovation is you look at the early 2000s with the dot-com bubble. You build so quickly, so rapidly, and there sometimes is a bit of a quality issue with some of those projects that run out there. In the crypto world, we had ICOs, which were basically the crypto equivalent of an IPO that 9 times out of 10 you invested in, fell flat, nothing came out of it, you lose your money. There is a risk that we're going to continue to see that as other applications of the blockchain become more prevalent and mainstream. That being said, such open and interesting potential for where crypto and blockchain could go. The other piece, though, that's really going to hold it back is the regulation side. Until international governments really address the issue of what is crypto to us and how are we going to allow safe access to it, a lot of these projects are still going to be operating in a gray zone.
Yeah, thanks, Tanner. I think it's interesting, the regulation side of things too. Just personally, kind of an interesting thing that I think about is just how regulation is going to form. Like right now we have our banking system and how that's developed, and just kind of sort of that kind of centralized control, or when you're looking at kind of capitalism and other things and how that's really kind of locked in, and how crypto is looking to kind of obviously decentralize that and have it be a little different. And is that possible? Is there still going to be groups that kind of come in the way of that? How can we make that work? It's definitely an interesting time to see what will happen. And before I go to Sarah for this question too, should I invest in the Shiba Inu coin? That's my question for you before we go. So thinking about it now.
Full disclosure, I did, and I regretted that very quickly. But
fair enough. Thanks, Tanner. Really appreciate the insight into that world. Sarah, what's new on the frontiers for data? Yeah.
For me, I think the biggest thing that's coming up is a thing called the singularity. So when you start extrapolating technology trends, the singularity is the date on which a computational intelligence will match a human intelligence, the power of the human brain, and then exceed it. That was a concept that was first put out about 15 years ago, and they thought at that time it'd be somewhere around about 2050, maybe 2045. I think we're going to see it before 2030. It's coming really soon, and then computers will learn to scheme, and then they'll learn to take control of us, and then all kinds of really interesting things will happen. But one of the things I'm starting to see in the predictive field already is aggressive and defensive AI. So, for example, really good use in the health insurance space is that some of the health insurance companies now have started assessing claims from hospitals about the claims they're putting in for reimbursement for costs on behalf of their patients reasonable, and do they fall within the scope of what should be happening, and do they match essentially the coding and the regulations around the space. So that cost a bunch of hospitals a lot of money in a very short space of time. So they've now invested in their own AI that says, when we get audited, what are they going to find in terms of the things that don't fit within their scope of what they'll pay, and what do we actually need to do to fix it before they come. So what we're seeing scammers trying to get to us and fish through AI, and we're seeing defense coming through on the email about how fast can we pick it up, how fast can we block it, how fast can we push it out. So it's kind of like the internet is for porn. What we're seeing is some of the potentially maybe not so good uses of AI are actually going to drive defense, which is going to cause this escalating and accelerating trend of development where you've got to keep up because the cost of not keeping up is quite significant economically. So I think that's going to get us to somewhere around about the singularity. 2027 would be my guess. So about 6-7 years out. And I don't know what's going to happen at that point, but it's going to be really, really interesting to see it. So yeah, it's something to think about and something to watch for as AI becomes part of everyday life. Data science and predictive analytics becomes a tool that everybody's using in the same way that television advertising came out when we first got the idiot box. It's how we use that new technology and therefore how it's going to accelerate that's going to actually end up changing us.
Oh gosh.
It is terrifying. Anyway.
Can we just talk about the 2027? That is like not that many years. Like Sarah, I didn't expect to need some decompressing after that year, but
yeah, but it'll take a while before they learn to lie to us, right?
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you.
They might be as smart as us, but they'll probably have the emotional intelligence of your average 3-year-old for a little bit longer than that. It'll take them longer to learn to scheme and to lie and to hide things and to do what may in our best interest that we probably wouldn't accept if we saw it coming.
So what I hear you saying is we're not going to start getting dogs and cats. We're going to have AI for puppies.
That's already Tamagotchi. That's already happening.
Oh, the chat is a bit crazy right now. Good thing our programmers have zero bias. We'll be the pets. Yeah, I don't know. I'm feeling a lot of anxiety. Let's bring this back to 2022. I'm not ready for this level of anxiety. Josh, were there more questions
I think
you had on that?
I mean, I just saw it just come back. I don't know if we want to bring that back to Tanner there, but just just Danielle's question about crypto's environmental impact. That's a hot topic as well. Again, no pun intended from the summers this year, but yeah, it's a thing. So yeah, Tanner.
Yeah, the whole industry has been concerned about that. So really, the energy usage comes from crypto mining activities. That's where folks are really using GPUs and other specialized equipment to actually mine different blocks that then turn into an associated value of a cryptocurrency. A bit of good news on that front, and actually happened a few days ago. There are these things called, basically different protocols. They are branches of the original coding language that is running Bitcoin or Ethereum or some of these other cryptos. There was a recent soft fork. So when you move away from that main programming called Taproot, and Taproot for Bitcoin, one of the major efficiencies is actually on power. So on mining, how much power, how much processing space is needed to actually mine the algorithms that then turn into a completed block and a completed solution. So it is something that developers are really concerned about, is making sure that we are being mindful of our consumption. But there is also a finite drop off, because crypto is actually not an infinite asset. It's very much like gold or silver or any natural resource, in that it is designed to be finite. That's part of what gives it an inherent value. So by, I think it's 2034, most mining activities will likely cease, because there won't be much in the way of additional crypto to mine, at least from Bitcoin. We don't know about other coins that are cropping up now, what their processes are going to look like in Ethereum. So I think by the time we hit mid-decade, we'll probably see significant drop-off in energy usage as computing power increases and as these forks become a little bit more sensitive to energy consumption. But I am happy that the industry is thinking about it and actually trying to do something and agreeing by consensus, because that is the only way you can roll these forks out to do something about it.
All right. Yeah, and there's I guess another question there too, just quantum computing too, with respect to the blockchain. There's so many things here. It's all, yeah. Is there any comments on that? Do you want to talk about that at all? Is that a thing, or I'm just kind of going to the chat here, but.
I mean, there's a lot of uncertainty. I mean, quantum computing itself is it in its infancy, but the thing is that if you think about it, as quantum computers become powerful enough to crack the code, similarly, these computers will be used to come up with better encryption algorithms as well. So everything moves together in the world of tech. It's not like, if we get a new PC, you will notice that after a few years, no matter how much RAM you get, how powerful your PC is, it starts to slow down, because that computing power starts to get used up with better, faster software and whatnot. So I think there's a lot of uncertainty, but definitely it will change. As I said, it will change the way that we think about the world in ways that I don't think we can think about that definitively right now, because it's such a paradigm change that we cannot say, oh, it's just going to be a faster computer, because it's a totally different ball game altogether.
Yeah, and I think in terms of quantum and blockchain, the whole principle behind a blockchain is that it's distributed. So you need multiple nodes that are also running the same protocols and the same hardware in order to interact in a distributed network. The problem with quantum computing as it stands right now is, quite frankly, the number of functioning quantum computers out there and how cost prohibitive they are to develop. That's probably not something we're going to see on a mass scale for quite some time. So there is some thinking around how can it be used from a cryptography standpoint to maybe mine more efficiently or faster in some cases. That being said, given basically the underlying protocols have to be agreed to by all parties anyway, there's no intention to have an unfair advantage for one party, running, say, a quantum computer to be able to mine all the crypto. So for that reason, I'd say we're probably about a decade out from really seeing any major impacts there, but something to start thinking about for sure.
Yeah, a decade out still seems so close though. Geez. Obviously there's been questions going on in the chat. I just thought I'd open it up too, as if there's anyone that feels more comfortable asking a question. If you want to raise your hand and ask a question over Zoom. Is there anybody that has a burning question to bring up in here? It's been a lot of great discussion so far, and really appreciate the comments and the questions in the chat, but just thought I'd offer that as an opportunity as well. So yeah, it could be a comment too. You're right. Absolutely, Ritika. Sorry. Yeah. Yeah. Is everybody? I mean, thumbs up if people actually enjoyed the conversation. You can throw an emoji up. Is this good? I feel like, yeah, it's a good conversation. I know this is a lot about tech too, and these fields, but obviously a lot of things apply to the project management as well too, just in talking about risk and change and communication. So I'll pass it back to Ritika over here to carry on, but I appreciate the discussion. Thanks a lot for all of the wonderful, insightful comments and discussion from our panelists and from the chat.
Yeah, I think I'm still a little shell-shocked by the 2027, because I was like 2020 is ages away, and now we're like year or two into that. So yeah, what is time? Like, the tree is the only way I know what time it is. So I think we have like another 10-15 minutes. We're about to wrap, but do you want to give people a chance to share what they have to say? I think, as Manoj said, we have no idea what's going to happen. I would have never guessed my professor dad is sending me Bitcoin prices. I would not have predicted that, and he has explicitly said, I need you to keep me on track because I'm not going to get outdated. So people are changing as much. And yeah, great question and a great way to end. Unless people raise their hand, what got you interested in your field to begin with? Yeah, because how did you fall into this world? Who wants to start?
Well, I come from very humble beginnings in India, and my story is basically I was trying to do something better with my life than working in a very underpaid, overworked job, and a computer institute opened up in my little town. And the first year around, I was not able to enroll because of lack of funds. And then the next year, I was able to collect enough money to enroll myself, and I just fell in love with computers. I think I mentioned it earlier, I'm an introvert, and it was so much easier to talk to machines. It never talked back, didn't show an attitude. It just did what I asked it to do, and it could solve real problems. So it was just the best the best profession to get into. And then after that, I've been trying to make sure that I stay on the cutting edge of technology, jumping into things like blockchain, artificial intelligence, and such. So if you stay ahead of the game, like in terms of pushing the envelope, looking at innovative technologies, you learn a lot, you fail a lot, but you have a lot of fun in the process as well.
Thanks, Manoj. Really appreciate that. I mean, I think even education's changing now with so many resources online. Like, yeah, now it's not an issue if you can't afford education.
Yeah,
you can
absolutely.
just
Yeah.
for
Back then,
free online.
yeah, exactly.
Tanner, Sarah, love to hear from you.
So I'm a migrant kid, and that's no different in Australia to it is anywhere else. And I was brought up that you need to do something to leave the world a better place than where you found it. And I also worked out pretty early on that I was more interested in the maths and sciences field. So actually started out becoming an academic. I don't like the idea of doing the same thing every day because I get bored really, really quickly. But when I found it being as an academic, it didn't matter. It's really interesting. In some ways, academia is civilization's lottery, that you have this group of people who are happy to test the unknown bounds, and maybe one of them will find something occasionally that'll lead to a really big change for everybody. But for most people in that space, you'll be working away on small increments to things that are partially understood. So I wanted to do something that made a difference. And so I ended up leading a spin out of the university and was getting into the telecommunications space. And from there, just started working out if I was going to make a difference, I needed to make a difference to somebody. And it wasn't going to be about the 1% inspiration. It was going to be about the 99% perspiration, about how do you actually get from a thing or an idea or a concept to something that was actually I could point to and say I was part of that. And that was a good thing to have been part of. And that eventually led me through a very strange random walk of jobs into something which I can now in hindsight call innovation. And so this is still where I am. And it's a joy to be alive and working through the digital revolution. It's the most profound change since the Industrial Revolution to everything about the way we live. And it's a wonderful place to explore the new. And like, I think my last 3 job titles wouldn't have meant anything to my parents when they were back at the start of their careers. And I think that's really cool.
Yeah, I feel like in our last event, we kind of talked about some of these new titles in PM specifically, but I think that's another event topic on its own, just all the different types of new things that people will do if machines are going to take on some of the admin overhead. But yeah, Tanner, we'll end with you.
Yeah, so my parents grew up definitely struggling. My dad grew up in Brooklyn, my mom in London, to difficult families, and very much as everyone else, I was always instilled with leave the world a better place than where you started. But I didn't start in tech. I was lucky enough to study in Vancouver at UBC and at Langara for about 7 years, and actually worked in nonprofits. And I thought that I was going to be staying more in the higher ed and more the advocacy side of working with nonprofits as my main career, because I really liked the ability to solve complex problems, to work with people, build close connections. And I always enjoyed working with the public sector and trying to navigate that space. I just, for some reason, I like bureaucracy, and I don't know what's wrong with me, but here we are. Unfortunately, life always has a odd way of turning out. And I was finishing up my grad degree. I was diagnosed with cancer, and I wasn't a landed immigrant in Canada at that point. So I actually had to go home and return back to the States. And I spent quite a long time trying to figure out what I really wanted to do. And I came down to this understanding that I didn't want 2 days to look the same. I always wanted to be doing something new and something innovative and something cutting edge. And I was lucky enough to have an opportunity, a very rare one, to become a marketing director for an international technology firm that worked with the public sector, mostly with law enforcement, and worked for them for about 2 years doing marketing, but also more like solutions development, so understanding how we can actually solve really complex international crime situations for customers. And from there, was lucky enough to get a phone call from Chainalysis, who took a chance and brought me on board. And I could say no 2 days have looked the same. And being able to work in such a cutting edge field where you really are making a difference in building out a brand new asset class that can be so beneficial, that's really what keeps me going.
Tanner, your story of, yeah, I think I as someone who has struggled with visa in Canada, it's yeah, anyways, different panel for a different time, but thank you everybody. I think, yeah, like the chat was great. I can easily say we really enjoyed this panel. And yeah, we'll move to wrap. And you know, it's such a great topic for the end of the year as we do a bit more reflecting and celebrating. So on that note, our actual last event of the year is a social event. We're doing it in person. And this is our first in-person event since March 16, 2020, as we all know. So super excited, would love to see you there. But also, before I jump into the next slide and the last slide, for our Jan event, we are hoping to do a workshop around kind of some intention setting and goal setting for project managers, because, you know, even in this conversation, we all have a part to play. We all are in different organizations doing magic and science at the same time, and are looking for PM adjacent workshop facilitator to take us through that process and do that early in the year. So if you know of anyone, please reach out to any of us. And then we'll move to our last slide where we have an ask, and we will put the link in the chat. But you know, as PMs, we love feedback, we love surveys. We are going to ask you to do it now so that we can get some feedback. We will do a random draw for $25 for one person. So please do it. It'll take you just a couple minutes, and I'll keep talking and entertaining you all till you all do it. But really just trying to get a sense of what you enjoyed the most, why you keep coming back to this community, and how we can improve our process, because this community is hoping and has always been democratic. And I actually made a mistake earlier. We are not 7 years old, we're 8.5. So a shout out to my fact checkers here. And the first event was I will tell you, because why not?
I gotta keep you honest, you know?
Well, the last year and a half was, I think, so June 2013 was our first event. So yeah, it's been really great to see PM evolve with the digital revolution, as we've named it, not just us, but globally. But I'll stop rambling.
Trademark on us.
Yeah, sorry, that we started that actually. But yeah, I just wanted to say thank you to all our volunteers. It's a lot of hard work outside of office and work, and putting these together in such high quality and content is not easy. So shout out to Josh, Daniel, Kenny. Yay.
I was gonna say, you guys do this out of the on your own time. This is incredible.
Yes.
I mean,
Yeah.
I organize virtual event. It takes so much effort, but doing this for the community, it's commendable. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Manoj. Thanks everyone for
Thank
coming.
you.
Yeah, I think
right.
you can stop recording. We'll hang up for a bit.